Hello, my friend, and welcome to this episode of A Call to Leadership. I'm Dr. Nate Sala, your host, and I'm so glad you are here. Well, life as you know it is full of challenges, unexpected twists, turns, trials, triumphs, tribulations. What is it that we need to do in order to overcome these? We have to build the strength and the skills in advance. Now, how do we do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. I've invited someone with expertise in this area, Ciara Stockeland, an author, speaker, 3-time Ironman. She is going to break down this relationship between our mind and our body and our challenges. Can't wait for you to join us. We're going to geek out on a little triathlon stuff. I'm Dr. Nate Sala, and this is A Call to Leadership. Ciara, so good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about visiting.
Oh my goodness, what a treat. And you and I share many aspects of leadership that I thought would be relevant to our listener. One in particular, you are an Ironman, right?
That's right. Yes.
What an amazing journey, the feat of getting to that level. A lot of folks don't know what it entails, and even how it relates to business, how it relates
Right.
to profitability and finances. There's so many parallels. Let's start our listener with just the basics. What is an Ironman? What do you have to do to attain that level of endurance?
Yes. Well, it's a lot on race day for sure. And then, of course, leading up to it, I did not start my athletic journey until I was in my mid-30s. So I was never in any athletics in high school or college or anything at all. I was more of an art type of girl. And then a friend of mine said that I should try running. I really remember that first time I ran with her, I could not even make it down the block. I thought this is just crazy, but she was such an encourager, which I find the running community to be, and said, let's just go a little bit at a time. So I did my first 5K, I did a 10K, and I thought, this is a horrible distance. Never going to do that. I want to stick with really short 5K. And so I dabbled in small sprint triathlons here or there, little citywide races and things. And some friends of ours were involved in Ironman and had kept encouraging me, anyone can do it. You can do this. And I just thought, there's no way I'd be interested in swimming for 2 miles in open water and biking for over 100 miles and then running a marathon. Crazy. No. But my husband had always had a dream of doing an Ironman. And so when he prepared for it and then did his, and we went and watched him, I sat there and watched him and so many other athletes, every age, every size, every demographic. And I thought, you know what? If they can do this, maybe I could do it. And could I do this as a lesson to my business clients? And so that's what actually pushed me. I thought I could use that and just relate it to business coaching. And so I committed to my first Ironman. I was training for a 5K at the time, and in 16 weeks went from 5K training to full Ironman training.
Wow, unbelievable. So for the listener, it is a 2.4 mile swim. That's how you start your day. And there's a reason why you start with swimming, because you're pretty much exhausted by the end. You don't want to swim at the end, right?
No, everyone says, oh, I wish I could swim at the end. And then, no, everyone would die.
No. Yeah, the risk of drowning, right? You want to swim while you're super fresh. I come from a swimming background. I swam in high school. I love to swim. And so that was never an issue, although can be very daunting for folks, especially who don't have a water background to swim. And so, of course, for some, it's actually the most mentally and sometimes physically challenging. And then you get out of the water, and then it's time to hop on your bicycle. And so you ride your bicycle, what is it, 114 miles, right?
112, sorry.
166, right? So 112 miles. Yes, you heard me right. 112 miles, human power, cycling. And then when you're all finished with that, you get to go home. No, you don't get to go home.
You eat some more gels and drink some more. And then,
right. And then you go run a marathon. 26.2 miles. Yeah. You go run a marathon after you've done all that. So someone listening right now is like, that is insane. It's all human locomotion.
Right.
Why does someone do that?
For me, I love a challenge. I love solving a problem. And I think I had just said I would not be interested in anything like that, even from a training perspective. The thought of sitting on a bike for 4 hours on a Saturday morning while I was training, just no interest to me. But again, as I saw people complete this, I thought, what could that do for my mind? Like to push myself beyond what I ever thought possible, try something new. And I think everybody has their own reason. Some people have been swimmers, or like my daughter, actually, she's 18. She just competed in Kona as well. So she did her
Mm,
first Ironman this year at 18.
nice.
She was a swimmer like you. And that's why she got into triathlon. And so she wanted to push herself competitively past high school. For some people, it's in memory of someone, or maybe they're a runner and they're just tired of doing marathons all the time. I think we all have our own reason. But for me, I just wanted to challenge myself beyond what I ever thought I possibly could do.
140.6 miles is quite the challenge.
It is.
Yeah, indeed. So, and for me, it was similar challenge. I had done a lot of individual sports. Of course, I played basketball and football and soccer and all these sports, and of course, swimming. And I thought, wow, what an interest! I was invited by a friend. Say, yeah, you should come
Okay.
do a triathlon. And it was a sprint distance. And what we mean by the sprint distance is the shortest distance. You don't sprint. Most of us don't. Some do.
Right.
Elite
Your day
athletes.
is just a sprint compared. Yeah.
Right, for sure.
Short. Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be, anywhere from 3 or 4 miles. Well, it could be like a quarter-mile swim and a 12-mile bike ride or something along those lines, and a 4-mile run. So it's definitely a busy day. I mean, you are expending some energy, and then you can move up, of course, Olympic and then 70.3 Ironman, and then 140.6. And so I had gotten to 70.3, and then I blew my back out. I had a major back injury, double herniation, L5S1, and my doctor said, no more swimming, no more cycling, no more running. I needed to strengthen my core. And I hadn't spent a lot of time on the core strengthening. So it took about 8 years of physical therapy, and to avoid surgery, really.
Right.
And to get strong enough to where I can actually take a run again. But you mentioned something that was really important. You mentioned the endurance that you build in your mind, in your spirit. It's so important for us as leaders to find ways to prepare. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's spiritual. But in these different domains, in these quadrants of preparation for the challenges ahead, and it's such an important exercise to know that I'm going to face high challenge situations in the future. What am I doing to prepare myself for those? Sometimes you may be preparing yourself physically now, but of course, the physical preparation, even for an Ironman, there is a mental preparation, right? You have to mentally be prepared for this massively exerting experience. But that mental preparation also prepares you for physical and mental preparation in the future. Is that how you've developed?
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I completed my first Ironman, what I was most proud of was how much my mind had grown. So I've been an entrepreneur since I was a child. Like I've always had businesses. So I faced challenges. I love to learn. I mean, we all have life happen, right? So we all have hard things. But I was so proud of how I had set out to do something, how I had learned to do it, how I had learned to put the pieces together, which is what I love about triathlon. I tend to get bored. And so to have so many different pieces to put together, I learned all about nutrition. I knew nothing about nutrition. And you feel so accomplished. There were so many times during the training where you don't want to do what's on the training plan. You're really tired. Lots of different things happen. I know in swimming, I had kind of a season, like I've never been a fan of open water swimming. So all my kids were both swimmers in high school and I was comfortable in the water. Open water swimming by yourself is a whole different beast. And so I had to work through those challenges. And I remember my coach telling me, Ciara, every time you accomplish something, it's a mental file. And when you get to race day, and you get in the water and you have that panicky moment, you let your brain have its little temper tantrum. And then you say, okay, but here's the thing. Remember that time we finished the mile swim by ourselves? Remember that time, and you just start to draw on those files. And so I was so proud of how I had learned to control my mind and understand how the mind works, in a way that I never had before, probably because I'd never been involved in athletics. So to push and to conquer was pretty cool.
It's so important. The question I want to ask our listener is, are you preparing yourself through high challenge situations today for the high challenge situation in the future? What are you doing to truly challenge yourself today? Because those challenges are coming in the future. And if you can look back and you can remember and recall how you overcame the obstacle, it will give you courage to do it in the future. In other words, small victories and large ones, they build courage. They build confidence. So we have to build victories into our lives. And the victory doesn't necessarily have to mean, oh, I beat this person or that person. You know this just as well as I do. Unless you're a high, elite athlete, you're doing it to what we call PR, right? Get a personal record, right? You want to just improve, see progress in your own journey. Sometimes, honestly, Ciara, when I was doing it, I was so incredibly competitive that I didn't have as much fun as when after I had my back injury, because after I hurt my back injury, I actually started slowing down and enjoying it and having conversations with people like, oh, this is actually kind of nice. Maybe it's not always about the competition and about the personal record, but
I was going to say one time, so my second Ironman was in Alaska and I went into it injured, which what that feels like. So disappointing. 4 weeks beforehand, really injured myself. And so I had to walk the entire marathon. And I had convinced myself up until the day I was going to run. Like, I'm just going to get out there and it's just going to be, got off the bike, got into transition. Nope, not running. And in that moment, I had the option of, so disappointing, training for all of this. I had hoped to PR all these pieces, or I can do the very best I can and enjoy the day. And in that day was one of my most fantastic marathons of an Ironman, because I visited with people. I said thank you to every single volunteer. I ate the smorgasbord, at every aid station. And so, I think we can be really competitive even in our own quest to become better leaders. And sometimes we don't stop and enjoy the process of it as much as we do when we're forced to sometimes.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's another thing about life, is that this is a great lesson for life is, are we going only for the destination, or do we enjoy the journey along the way? And so often we're just focused on getting there. And it's like, but have I been living?
Yeah.
Have I been truly living on the way? And I think that sometimes we find that the answer is no. And I have to revisit that. It happened to me many years ago, a similar incident. I was training for a sprint and I wanted to place in the sprint. I just wanted to place. And so I was just hammering out the 3-4 miles and just all those fast twitch muscles. And I placed and I was so happy. But then I was signed up just a few months later for the Chicago Marathon, which are a different set of muscles. And I haven't been running long distance. So I tried to turn the corner and I got to about 18 miles and it's like, I'm just going, see what happens. And I had never walked in a race ever. I had always seen people walk in a race, and someone listening might have heard me tell this story on another episode. And I had always thought, if you walked, it just means you didn't, you didn't try hard enough, or there was always some kind of like judgment. And I didn't even know I was judging until I was running, and I had told my wife, hey, meet me here at 13.1, and then meet me here at 26.2. And around this time, I was so confident. I think that's, you can actually have a distinction between confidence and arrogance, but at this time, I thought I was being confident. Well, I got the first 13 miles were a piece of cake. Chicago's very flat and a lot of people around and music and everything. And 14, 15, 16 started to feel a little bit of a 10, 17, 18, 19. I was like, oh boy, I don't know if I've got 7 more miles in me to run. So 20, 21, running out of juice. And by my 22nd mile, I took my first step ever in a race to walk. And it was very humbling of an experience. And at that point, I had empathy for everyone else who came to that place where they gave their very best But that didn't mean that they were out of the race. They would continue to give their very best in a much different way.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. You don't have to run the whole race to finish it. You just have to finish and finish strong.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I think, that's what makes a really good leader too, is empathy. And we don't find empathy most often if we haven't gone through something very hard. So in my business journey, I've had a lot of wins, lots of things. People see the highlight reel all the time. And I've had a lot on the highlight reel, but I've also lost everything, including our home. And my husband and I talk about that in our business journey. And that time in our life really created such an empathy. Everybody has stuff. Everyone has stuff going on. Everyone has hard times. And just like you when you're running, you kind of look at oh my goodness, they probably didn't train. They didn't do their, whatever we think. We have no idea what's going on in their life until we can't do it. And then it's like, oh, okay. So sometimes this is just life. Sometimes there's outward circumstances. Sometimes other people contribute to that circumstance. And I think good leaders can be empathetic and understand to look at the whole picture of someone's journey.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. It's really difficult to have empathy unless you too have faced the struggle. You've faced the loss. And it's such an important part to the human condition is to say, not I've been there from the perspective of you should do what I did, but I've been there that I know the road is difficult.
Yeah.
I've experienced that road. I have felt some degree of the same or similar kinds of pain. You talk about losing your house. We as a business owner, there's a business owner listening today. There are sacrifices that you make sometimes that you don't want to make, you don't choose to make, but you just have to make when you're struggling, and they're not easy, but they strengthen your struggle muscles.
Yeah. And I think that's what it is. It's what do you do with that? So when I thought I could run and then I couldn't, I could have had a bad attitude. I could have pulled myself out. I could have given up. I thought, oh, geez, I flew to Alaska. I'm getting that medal and that finisher shirt, right? Same thing with business. Okay, we lose everything. I'm just going to be done. I'm just not going to contribute. I'm not going to help people. I'm not going to talk about my story. Or I can use my story to help someone else. I can finish the race. I can finish, in whatever way I'm capable of when I showed up today. We always have a choice on what we can do with our struggles, our tragedy. And that's what makes us an amazing person. When you meet people where there's so much depth of character and I'm like, I just want to sit and listen to them all day and talk to them all day. It's because they've learned how to persevere and how to finish well. And that's really hard. But the more often we do it, the easier it gets.
When I'm looking at potential entrepreneurs and they have many qualities that perhaps can lend to their success, I think the one quality that is not only underestimated, but also appreciated is resilience. The aspect of resilience, I'll take a resilient entrepreneur over a resourceful entrepreneur, or I should say a resourced entrepreneur any day. And when I say about resource, someone who has a lot of resources available to them. If they have low resilience and high resources, I will take the one that has high resilience and low resources, because what happens to the one who runs out of resources without resilience? That one gives up.
Yep.
But the one who has resilience will become resourceful.
Yeah.
And that's who I want to be around. The resourceful ones, the ones that say, hey, you know what? I'm here. I'm getting this medal. You know what? Here's my resource. I'll walk. I'll crawl. I'll get across that finish line.
I have my attitude. I can keep that intact. What do I have?
Here's and that's a choice. You're at, you can't, there's a lot of things you can't choose in life. And someone listening will have remembered me saying this, but your attitude, you can choose your attitude. You have control over your attitude. And I have an attitude, as we like to say, an attitude of affirmation, of appreciation, of gratitude. So what do I have? What
Mm-hmm.
do I have available to me to accomplish what I need? And what can I manufacture and manifest along the way? That's the attitude of a victor.
Yeah,
Incidentally, not the attitude of a victim. We have to
exactly.
make the choice who we're going to be.
Yep.
And as you said, it plays out in business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard. Some days it's very hard. I think that's one really interesting thing when you're in any sport, I'm sure, but triathlon running, I can never get over how much we negotiate with our brain. Like it's just us and ourselves out there all day long. Oh, I have this many miles. Well, I can do this. I can do this at this mile. I mean, we just negotiate over and over. And to learn to be in control of the negotiation is so key. And that plays into that attitude of gratitude and thankfulness as well. So when there's an awful circumstance, when we're treated poorly by a customer, when things don't go as planned, when there's economic issues, do I have the attitude of, okay, that's not what I planned. However, here's what I can do about it. Here's what I can control today. We have to learn that. That's not something that some people have more of a tendency, I think, to be gratitude, thankful people, but we have to practice and work on that. And you mentioned something, surrounding yourself with those kind of people. I think that's one of the number one things, right? Like we have to surround ourselves with people that have that type of attitude as well, so we can draw on that resource.
Yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important to take an inventory. Take an inventory of those around you who are either contributing or causing calamity or anywhere
Yeah.
in between to your mind, not necessarily to your journey, but to how you think, right? The negotiations you're having in your mind, such a critical aspect of your development. And
Yeah.
it will define your vision for the future. And your vision definition for the future will ultimately cause these steps to be ordered where you're going in life. And
Mm-hmm.
so, boy, I can't stress enough the importance of assessing your community. And it's okay to to respectfully close some doors for some
Right.
relationships that aren't fruitful. Don't
Yeah.
be just a taker, but if there's relationships where you are not able to really have a well-rounded set of commitments that you share, it's okay. It's okay to take a break.
Yeah. Yeah. We only have so many opportunities, so much time for relationship, so much time in our day. And so I think one phrase I've been loving to use lately in my own life and in that of my clients is being a good steward of what we have. So whether that be a good steward of our money, good steward of our time, good steward of our resources, being a good steward, meaning if I only have this amount to work with, how can I multiply that? If I only have X amount of time, I don't want to give it away to people that are not going to appreciate it, people that can't speak into me or I can't truly speak into them. If I only have X amount of money, how can I best invest that in my business or, whatever that might look like? And so I think having that mindset, how am I being a steward of this relationship, this conversation, this time, this resource, I think will really help as a filter for those decisions.
And you know what I love about that word steward is, and I love using that terminology as well, is that the connotation is that it's on loan to me.
Yeah.
I'm not the owner of it. You see, so this body
Mm-hmm.
of mine, eventually it will decay.
Yep.
This home that I live in, eventually somebody else is going to live in it.
Yeah.
This car I drive, or these kids who I get to be a part of. Not that they're going to be someone else's kids, but they're going to learn from someone else eventually.
Yeah.
And so everything that I have, at least on this side of heaven, will go someplace else. So and so if it, even the money I have, I mean, even
Yeah.
my finances will be someone else's eventually, unless, even if I squander them,
Yeah.
they're still belong.
Yeah.
They'll move into someone else's hands. And so that idea of stewardship is, am I best utilizing what I'm entrusted with
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. Mm-hmm.
while I have access to it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think when you think of it like that, there's a responsibility. Also, it reduces my grip, that possessiveness, if you
Hmm.
will, that it's mine. And I never liked that terminology, even when I
Yeah.
was younger. I would have, if I would have lived, I would have been a great person, like in a commune where everybody shared, right? But
Yep.
I truly believe that uh, that if I can change my thinking to the thinking that everything I have will be gone one day and it'll belong to someone else, then I can clear my mind of not using it to serve others
Yeah.
and to bless and to benefit. I
Hmm.
think that's the highest call of the usage of all of our resources. In fact, my son many years ago asked me, Dad, is it is it wrong to want to be rich? And then he qualifies. He goes, I mean, really rich. And he
Yeah.
had to be like 12 years old. And I started laughing. And I said, well, son, I don't. I'm not really impressed with all the zeros behind someone's one in a bank account. I own an accounting and advisory firm. I see people all the way from destitute all the way to never have to work another day in their life. It's not that truly is remarkable. It's what you do with it
Yeah.
to benefit humanity, to to progress the human condition, to build up rather than destroy, to serve and to save rather than to tear down. And 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 I said that's the purpose of wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I say all that to say it's this the idea of stewardship
Hmm.
is such an important concept. If you're listening and you hadn't begun to really comprehend that, I suggest that you just think about that. Think about everything that we have eventually will be someone else's, and how am I best using it today?
Yeah. Yeah. Such a different way to look at something.
Indeed. So
Hmm.
you believe I want to change the channel a little bit because you believe in something that's important that I believe in as well. And you talk about this myth of work life balance. And someone listening would have said, Nate, I know you've talked about this before as well. So I was like, yes, we're going to get Ciara's perspective on this as well. Tell me what your thoughts are in this side of the equation when it comes to life. We've heard the term so many times over, right?
Yeah.
It's such a cliche.
Yeah.
Does
And
it
I think that
exist?
I don't think so. I think work life it's all wrapped into who we are. I was just having this conversation with some ladies the other night. We went out for dinner. They're all entrepreneurs, really intelligent. They have families. They're at different stages. It was interesting to find that I'm the oldest one at the table. I don't know how I got there. So lately I've been the oldest one in the room. But so we're all at different stages of motherhood and family life and our businesses. And that's the question that came up. So they looked to me, okay, Ciara, you've been married 22 years, your kids are adults now. So talk to us about work. Like, do you ever feel guilty? How do you manage the kids and the work and and I said, I don't know if it's our culture that places this idea on us that our identity is this over here. So I'm a mom, but then my identity over here is that I'm a girlfriend to all my friends. I'm a daughter, I'm a business owner. Instead of my identity, I'm Ciara. I'm Ciara, and part of Ciara is that I love triathlons and I love helping people with their business and I love my kids and I love being a wife to my husband and I love going out. Like there's all of these components to who I am. And depending on what I'm working on, that's going to have priority. So if I'm in my office and I'm working with my clients, my priority is them. There's no balance between them and being a mom. At the moment, it's all in for my clients. And when I close up shop for the end of the day and I go downstairs and make dinner because my adult children are coming over, there's no balance between that and my clients. My all in is for where I'm at that moment. And it's much more freeing to think that way. Whatever I'm involved in at that moment, I'm going to be the best steward of what I can be in that moment. And that's okay. And I don't have to feel guilt and I don't have to feel this tug between making everything equal because nothing will be equal in the moment.
No, it won't. And I love your terminology when you say that it's an integration, right? Rather than
Yeah.
a balance. I tend to look at it very similarly. And I liken the journey, the work life, or just the life journey as less of a balance, because balance means equality. And can we really put it on a spreadsheet and give equal time and equal effort and equal devotion and equal attention to all things? No. However, rather than looking at that like an integration that requires balance, look at it as an integration that is aiming for a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And the masterpiece is as if you were a maestro, a conductor, and your life is a symphony. And so you have what an opportunity to play different pieces and to your audience of everyone involved in your life. And you have different instruments, of course, on stage. And instruments represent people. And so you've got the strings and the horns and so on and so forth. And sometimes some of the instruments play well and they're supposed to play in harmony. Sometimes, as you had mentioned, when you're working, sometimes some instruments are silent and they don't play at all in that part of the piece. And the same thing with family. When you're 100% devoted and focused on your family, like I was over the holiday, then the business pieces are quiet during that part of the symphony. And you as a conductor, it's our responsibility to make sure that the right instruments are on stage, that if they're out of tune, to perhaps help them be in tune. And back to our earlier conversation about people who are maybe toxic and cancerous in your life, some instruments just don't belong on stage at all.
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about that, and I heard this said by a conductor, is the entire piece. You as a conductor, you as a maestro, to create this beautiful masterpiece, but not just from the perspective of I get to create a masterpiece. The one objective is to honor the work of the composer. And for me, a person of faith, I say, well, that must be God, the composer. So I'm to live a life that's fruitful and that honors the composer as I take the mantle of leading with this piece so that I can multiply and increase what I'm entrusted with. As you had mentioned earlier, it all comes full circle to be a good steward.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I like that illustration. I was thinking again about triathlon because we started that way. If someone said to me, Ciara, are you a runner? Are you a swimmer? I would say I swim and I run and I bike, but I'm a triathlete, right? And so in the moment of the swim, I'm not thinking about my cadence for pedaling, and while I'm on the bike, I'm not thinking about what is my pace per mile as I run. I'm in that discipline, focused on that discipline. Some are worse than others. So swimming would be my, thing that I need to work on improving, right? Nutrition as the fourth discipline. So all of these pieces have to work together. But at the end of the day, like you said, the goal is to finish well as a triathlete. And I think the same thing for life. Our goal is to finish well, that we're a human. Like you said, we're made in God's image. So our goal is to finish well, impacting people, doing the very best we can in each one of these disciplines of our life. Sometimes they integrate with each other. Sometimes they do not. But we're all given different talents. Some things we have to work harder on. Some things we enjoy more than others, right? But that's the beauty of it. And I really have a heart for women in particular in business, because that's who I work with, who are constantly in this state of guilt. I go to work and all I can think about is I should be with my kids, and I'm at home and all I can think about is that I should be there for my customers. And I tell them, just stop that. Like, learn to compartmentalize a bit, do the best you can possibly do in the moment with the job that you're working on in that moment, and then leave it, close the door, go work on the next thing. Sometimes they integrate. Sometimes you take your kids to work. My little kids came to my store many, many times with me, and then I was mom and storekeeper, right? But I think just that worldly message of we have to find balance. We're always going to be struggling if that's the way that we think, and that it's just not a peaceful way to build our life.
No, and it's I think that it's so important that you identify that, especially those specific instances where it's not ideal, right? The ideal situation is that there's no interruptions and I don't have to take my kids here or there. But is it really ideal? Is it really? Because sometimes maybe that's just what needs to happen. I remember even having my son in a room while I was working, and and he gets to overhear some of the things that I'm working
Yes.
on, or someone gets to see that, wow, he's a dad who you see a different side of him. I think that COVID was as heinous as it was, that had so many issues in terms of our loss of life and relationships. I think one good thing that came out of COVID is that it allowed us to get in each other's personal lives a bit, because we were
Yeah.
doing calls in our houses and our families were there and you could see what was on our home walls. And that was kind of
Yeah.
non-existent in a lot of ways before that time. And
Mhm.
it made us more personal. And
Yeah.
so maybe an ideal situation that's buttoned up and perfect, maybe that's just not reality. And it's okay
Yeah.
to give yourself permission and give yourself some grace that it's not always going to go the way you expected it, but it can also go the way that is still favorable and still helps you to finish well, no
Yeah.
matter what the journey is, no matter if you walk those last 6 miles, no matter if you walk the entire marathon portion of the event,
Yep.
finish.
Yep. I know when I was in Texas, I ran that marathon. I had a knee issue. I was really excited. This season I am injury free. Praise the Lord. It's been so amazing. But yeah, my previous 3, there's just always a naggle of some sort. So I was walking during this particular part in the marathon at the end of the Ironman, and by myself, and your mind is working. And someone came up to me and he said, "How are you doing?" He saw that brace on my knee and he's like, "Looks like you have a knee injury." And he's just talking to me, and I was saying, "Oh, my goal was to really just run the entire thing. That was my goal." And someone came up from behind us. I don't even know how he heard. I didn't think I was talking loud, but he came up and he said, "Hey, so what do they call someone that walks across the finish line at an Ironman?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he said, "An Ironman."
Mhm.
He's like, "It doesn't matter." And off he ran. And I was like, "Oh, I don't even know who it was." Right. And that's the perspective, like within our business too. I work with business owners that decide it's the end of the journey and they want to move on to a different chapter. What is everyone going to think of me? They'll think I'm a failure if I close. Well, first of all, that doesn't matter what they think if this is where you're supposed to be. And you aren't a failure. You're just closing the chapter. You're moving on to something different. You still opened a business. You did the very best you can with the resources you had. And so I think just all of that is so important, because we do just see highlight reels of people's lives, and we let our mind play games and we negotiate with our brain all the time, instead of just really thinking about finishing well and what does that look like in this circumstance or in this day or in this chapter or in my life, because that's really what's important, impacting people and finishing strong.
So critical. And when you talk about that, it's so important to think about, okay, well, I love the analogy of life as a story. I love the analogy as chapters. And of course, I've mentioned it before on the show, the old REO Speedwagon. If you're tired of the same old story, maybe it's time to
Yeah.
turn some pages, right? But that's the choice. Back to how we started our conversation. We have a choice to turn the pages and recognize that in this grand journey, in this grand adventure called life, there's going to be a lot of parts of the story that may seem like they are such a big deal and so problematic today, but in the grand scheme of the
Yeah.
story, they may be things that are not only are irrelevant, but you've completely forgotten about. I try to think of it like that. When I'm facing a challenging situation today, in 5 years, will I care about this? And think about that. Well, 5 years ago, what was really bothering me? Do I care about it today? Now, sometimes those are real issues and sometimes they
Yeah.
are lingering and challenging. But I would submit that overwhelmingly, at least in my own life, so many things I've fretted about in the past, they don't make any difference later in the future. And
Yeah.
so that helps me to reframe my thinking. And as you talked about, that negotiation, all that negative self-talk, and say, well, it's not as huge of a deal. So why am I getting all upset about it? Right. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, for example, in my own life, I've had situations, you talked about finances and business. There was a time in my life where this was back in 1998. So long, long time ago, but I had my check cashing business and I had, it was tax season and I had a bunch of checks I was supposed to cash and my bank account was negative and I had all these customers who were expecting me and waiting for me to cash their checks and I couldn't do it. And I thought, oh my goodness, the world is ending. I'm
The
never going to be
weight
able to
of that.
recover.
Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah. And my clients, they waited, and the world didn't end. And here I am today, 25 years later. And it's the question isn't, and I think you brought this up, the question isn't necessarily what is happening. Yes, it's important to learn from our mistakes. I think the other piece is, as you had mentioned earlier, what are we going to do about it, right?
Yeah.
What are our action items? And the same thing as in racing. So if you were to say, for business, what racing, if you were to look at, we call it racing, but events and endurance sports, if you were to say the top 3 learning lessons, from triathlon.
Yeah. So I say it's what I did the day I signed up for my first Ironman. First thing I did, I fired my coach and got a new one. So I reached out to my coach who was training me for Fast 5K. And I said, guess what I did? I just signed up for an Ironman. And he said to me, what distance? Which both you and I know, he knew the distance. Okay. So right there, it was a disbelief in what I could do.
Because
and I thought,
did he think that you were sign up for 70.3?
No, I think he was just being facetious. He was just being a little sarcastic, like, really? Okay, we're doing a 5K and now we're doing. And I thought, I can't have a coach that doesn't believe in me. I can't, because I don't know how to do this. I've never done anything like this. I have to have someone that says, Ciara, you're crazy, but absolutely, let's work hard. We'll put a plan together. So I fired him that day, which sounds like, oh, wow, it was hard for me because I do not like hard conversations. I've gotten I've trained myself to be better at them, but it's difficult, right? Confrontation. But I thought, no, this is a big deal. So I fired him and I hired the right coach. Okay. So number 1, you have to hire someone or put someone in your path that knows what they're doing, that's been there and done that, and that believes in you. That's really important. Number 2, I got the right gear. So I was like, I have a bike with a basket on the front of it. And my tennis shoes, I don't even know, like I've just had the same pair. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to run all these miles and I'm going to sit on the seat of that bike for hours and hours, I better have the right gear. And so I purchased the right thing. So I think getting those tools, right? Sometimes we push ourselves as entrepreneurs and business owners to be successful, but we don't surround ourselves with good people and we don't set ourselves up with success with the right team or the right tools for our business. So those 2 things. And then the third one, most important, I committed to it. This wasn't like, okay, this is going to be super cool and I'll kind of do the workouts when I want. I did every single workout on that plan, because if I'm paying that coach and I bought that fancy equipment and I want to show up and finish, I have to put the work in. And so I think those 3 things are really important. Hiring the right people, getting the right things on your team or in your business. And then you have to commit. You can't just be interested. You have to be committed into the success of it.
Nails. Gold. I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's so solid. Someone listening today is deeply blessed by that, by those incredibly important pieces to success, to winning, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So as we close, I have a question for you. One day, you'll be at the end of the last Ironman, if you will, in life. And as you cross that finish line, and you hear all the people cheering for you, what is one thing that you will want to have heard people say as you cross that finish line of life?
Well, you're making me tear up. I'm a crier, so I should have warned you. I really think, what the Bible says about well done. Like, to me, that would be amazing, to cross that finish line at the end of life and for God to say, Ciara, I gave you these desires and these talents. I put these people in your path purposefully and with intentionality. And you did a really, really good job. I'd be super thrilled.
Well, you are on your way.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Ciara. Thank you so much. What a great episode.
Good conversation. Thanks.